Welcome back to Corporate Time with Tom and Dan. I'm Tom.
I am Dan. Our producer Samantha's here, and Butler, the resident chopper, is in the other room. This is really cool, man, and I love it when we get a chance to talk to this guy.
Yeah, and it kind of all started when we reached out to Mike from Mike's Weather Page for an interview. And we just wanted to find out how he started. And if you're not familiar with who Mike is, follow Mike's Weather Page.
Indeed.
SpaghettiModels.com. My brother-in-law literally was freaking out, Mike, when I told him that...
when I say that I met this guy, or like I've met him through the internet, people think I'm lying.
Yeah.
Like he's a big deal.
Because my brother-in-law is like, he's like, I'm not joking. The entire insurance industry watches Mike religiously because they need to know when storms are coming and stuff. He's like, it's the industry standard in the insurance industry. Have you heard that,
And
Mike?
also surfers love you.
Yeah.
Sir, I get the most craziest emails, like pilots, and it's very scary to say.
Oh, no.
I mean, I crawl in my hole sometimes when I'm at the bar, at Chili's, let's say, and I just want to hide, because I'm sometimes it's overwhelming.
Yeah, but while pop in and you're just like, I think it was maybe earlier this morning or yesterday or something, and it was like, hey, not much of weather going on, but I'm just gonna chat with you guys, and I look, and you just you got a couple thousand people watching you. No big deal.
Yeah.
No big deal.
Yeah, we're bored. We're all in quarantine, right?
Yeah, man.
Yeah. And so anyway, after we spoke with Mike and interviewed him, and you could listen to that on, I believe, what was it, about a month or so ago?
It's
on Corporate Time?
listed, it's listed both on our YouTube channel, and you can also find it by just searching our app, ACT.
So we asked Mike, we're like, hey, would you mind coming on, especially during hurricane season, and, popping in with us?
We've never had a weather guy.
And be our official weather person, and we just thought it was a shot in the dark. We're like, man, he's probably a busy guy, and then you were like, yeah, for sure, let's do it. and it turns out we have the same sponsor, ABC Fine Wine and Spirits. And then I had a meeting with them. I'm like, hey, ABC, would you want to sponsor this call-in with Mike from Mike's Weather Page? They're like, yes, we love Mike. We love doing business with Mike. And then so now this is a sponsored segment.
Fantastic.
In fact, it's the first time I've ever can remember us starting a segment sponsored already. It never happened.
Well, it might be the first one that you lose after you're
No. We lose things on our own, Mike. We don't need any help.
And so we will have an intro and everything built, and I was going to talk to you about it since this is our first segment, and it is brought to you by ABC Fine Wine and Spirits. If you're going to shop at ABC in anywhere in Florida, use hashtag TDABC.
Indeed.
And you'll win a prize weekly, and they are a fine sponsor of Mike from Mike's Weather Page as well, and a great place to buy any wine, any spirits, any cigars.
Yeah, or those
Craft
last
beer.
minute.
the adult candy store.
Yeah. Hurricane supplies. Yeah, sure.
True.
Yeah. So Mike, is there any preference you have with music in your intro? Because we're trying to build an intro here.
I was thinking of going like a weatherman, kind of a Hamilton vibe.
Hamilton.
I had a guy write me 5 songs. I'll send those links to you. I'm a big Southern rocker. I love Leonard Skinner, Jimi Hendrix.
All right, I like the Southern rock.
All right.
Yeah.
Little Jimmy Buffett.
Okay.
So that would be the big bucket.
You got to do Simple Man. And
You could do that. I was going to do Drake.
Weatherman.
Now we're
Who
talking.
do I think I am, Brian Mike?
Now we're talking.
Record that. You got it. You got the good.
I'll send it to Brian Mike. I can't sing it.
I have my guy. He's going to write me a new song. We'll do something like
you
that.
have your own
He'll
guy.
put some Tom and Dan wordage in there.
All right.
Cool. We'll flesh that out and figure it all out. But anyway,
Cool.
Mike, since last time we talked to you, there's been a lot of weather things going on. I know this is already passed, but let's talk about the Sahara sandstorm that blew through, because I feel like it was the internet sensation for a while. And what was it?
I didn't see one lick of nothing.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, the media gets on something like that, and holy cow, it's on every feed, So we were attacked by the Saharan dust, and it's an actual very normal occurrence. It happens every year in July. The Saharan 3 million mile desert in Africa, the winds actually blow from the east and pick this dust up, and it carries all the way across the Atlantic. And the people, we have a lot of fans in the Caribbean, and it's a nightmare for those folks because it gets on everything. It messes up their respiratory systems. So it's a normal thing. It's a cool thing for hurricanes because what it actually does is it dries out the middle atmosphere. You need to have moisture in the middle atmosphere for systems that come across Africa, and it's a big deterrent to hurricanes. So you'll hear a lot about the dust. With storms, it actually gets entrained in circulation of a system and helps prevent further development. So it's normal.
Is there a size, though, of, like, let's say this particular year, did we get as much dust? Does it vary in the amount?
Did we get an abnormal amount this year?
No, this was almost record-breaking. So, at first I thought it was overhyped, but then I did read it was on the larger end of they call it a plume. I learn new words all the time. On our chats we joke about words, but plume of dust, and it was thick. It doesn't look like we have anything like that coming for a while, and it does make sunsets a little more vibrant. But you might have remembered the haze that we had. It was like I told everybody, it was like you'd be living on Mars because when you'd be driving home and all you saw was like a white milky sky. In fact, my daughter, we were going to softball, and she goes, "Dad, where's the sun?" Yeah. So that's what it did. It actually, it gets in the atmosphere and it just makes it hot and hell and hazy and ugly. So.
And if you think about it too, from like almost like scientific history, blotting out the sun with dust particles could be sort of a scary thing. I mean, that's all it takes to snuff out your life source, and the next thing you know.
It's 2020, right? I mean, come on.
Release the choppers. Yeah. You got to release the choppers.
So, Mike, do we have anything going on in the tropics? Like, speaking of like traditional media, every year it's the same story that this year is going to be the worst, the most active hurricane season.
I've never not heard that.
Yeah. Like they usually throw that in one way or another to get people's attention, I guess. But is there any validity to that? Is this year going to be more active than other years?
Well, it's funny, you guys. I knew we were going live today, and Colorado State University is a big predictor of storms. So they release their findings or their predictions kind of quarterly. Well, today they had a new update, and they've increased their numbers. So they're up to 20 named systems, including the 5 that we've already had, and they upped the hurricanes from 8 to 9, and major hurricanes 4. So that'll be on all the news this week. 20. There's only 21 names that they use, so it's almost to the W's. And after that, they go into the Greek alphabet, which is a little tidbit. Once they run out of names, and then we go to the Greek alphabet. That's only happened one other time. So I see all the predictions and the reasoning, and I do agree. Africa right now is one of their wettest early parts of the year so far, and that's usually an indicator we're going to have more waves come across Africa. The water's hotter than average, and this La Nino setup that you've probably heard a lot about, we're not going to be in an El Nino. In an El Nino year, the Pacific waters are warmer, and that creates shear in the Caribbean and the Atlantic, and it helps reduce hurricanes for our side, for the Atlantic. But now the opposite, when we're in a La Nina pattern, the conditions improve significantly for the main development region, the Atlantic, which is less shear, basically. So we're going to be in that pattern that promotes possibly more storms. So it's coming. Typically July is very slow. These little systems that we have popping off of the coast are very weird. They're like mid-level vorticities, they call them. And, we have another one right now brewing off the Carolina that might become a little something tropical at the end of this week. But that's not the real hurricane season. The real hurricane season is going to start, and unfortunately, we'll have something to track. I mean, we'll have something. It's just got to wait. It's coming.
During this time, I've that other hurricane that started in the Gulf is it more, I guess, likely that a hurricane starts especially early on the season, July, even June, in that region, as opposed to the stereotypical, because we've all used to all right, the hurricane starts as a tropical depression off the coast of Africa, then it just literally moves west, and then we see it turn into the hurricane. It's we've all seen it before. So is it more likely that hurricanes start in the Gulf of Mexico, around that area during this time?
Yeah, exactly. I have I have all the months on the bottom of my page, and it's really cool to see the progression of storms. And this time of the year, we rarely have anything in the Atlantic, almost zilch. So everything that starts this time of year would be down in the Western Caribbean and the Gulf. They're usually from like a decaying front. When we have these fronts come down, a little piece of, they call them the tails. They're just little low pressure areas start. And that's kind of how Michael, later season systems are almost the exact same. These fronts kind of help get things going. Charlie, so it's very possible to get a hurricane this time of year. There's been many years that we've had major hurricanes in the month of July, but they usually all, like you said, start down in the Gulf. The Gulf's hot. The Caribbean's Gulf very hot right now, way hotter than normal. So those are the areas you would look at, because there's a lot of shear in the Caribbean by like the Lesser Antilles Islands. So yes, this time of year we would focus on the Gulf and Western Caribbean. More towards August is when we start looking at these waves that come across Africa.
Gotcha. And when does the waves, the normal, hurricanes start coming off Africa, then moving west towards us? Like, when does that start ramping up?
Typically, first part of August, we'll start to see some waves. There's already indications the end of July we could see more favorable conditions. So everything this year is kick-starting a little earlier with the water being warmer and everything else. So yeah, I really think at the end of July we're going to start seeing waves. I mean, we already had one a couple of days ago. The NHC highlighted an area entering the Lesser Antilles. It dissipated because there's a lot of shear, but we're already starting to see the surface charts, more waves. So it's going to start very soon. A couple more weeks, we'll have more of these waves come across, and it's a flip of the switch whether or not they get going or not. It's really fascinating to watch. There's something called the ITCZ. It's called an Intratropic Convergence Zone. It's kind of like the equator of line across the Atlantic, and we get these little systems, and they're like little baby spinners, and they break away from that, almost like a baby breaks away from her mother.
Yeah.
And these little guys, they all follow this monsoon trough, and you'll see these waves, and when they start getting rotation, they get stronger. They actually break away from this because all storms have a northward, poleward motion to the north. So we watch these come across, and then as they develop, they pop off, and then you look at the Bermuda High, and you start looking at spaghetti models, and you'll see that Bermuda High is pretty strong this year. And those, unfortunately, usually means those storms will have a chance to curve up into either Caribbean, Gulf, East Coast. I mean, those are the things you just don't know this far out. But
yeah,
Gotcha.
That's how it all begins. It's really fascinating. And I have some cool wind maps that show the convergence of the winds from the south, and it actually spins like a top. The top winds come in from the northeast, the bottom winds come from the southwest. And if you just kind of do that with your hands, that's how a top starts spinning, and it helps counterclockwise these systems off Africa. And they're already coming off Africa with a little bit of vorticity, and that's what we're seeing over the United States with these little systems now. We saw it with Dolly, Edward, and we have maybe Faye for the Carolinas this week. And they're mid-level vorticities that plop over the water, and then they develop a lower pressure and then they start out, growing.
Is this like a preseason game for you? Is this when you start to really, because just in the little bit that you've talked to us about this, I can hear the excitement. I mean, obviously you love doing this, or you wouldn't have done it since 2004. It's like, is this like the start of the season, and you're like, it's go time? And my follow up to that, not to throw too much at you, do you feel obligated, like when something's happening, to kind of sit there and get as much information out to people as humanly possible, almost like this is your job?
Yeah, and luckily, like you mentioned, it's a passion. Thank goodness for social media, because that drives me sometimes. Because when I see people getting ramped up, it ramps me up.
Yeah.
So because you'll start seeing models shared, and then of course it seems like once that intensity gets up, then everybody's just kind of like, I don't know if it's an excitement. It's really a weird addiction that we all have. I think we talked about that last time, but people love the what ifs and that little excitement of, oh my goodness, we might have something coming. So when the models all pick up on it, it's like a kid at Christmas, you know. Everybody's
yeah.
like, oh wow, you know, look, we might have something coming, you know.
Mike.
And again, the page, spaghettimodels.com.
Yes.
Jump on there. I'm on there right now showing it. If you're watching via Twitch, twitch.tv/Tom and Dan Live. Watch the replays on YouTube. Search Tom and Dan Live. But, I mean, the site, there's not even enough space to put, I think, even one more ounce of weather information on this. I mean, this page is pure weather through and through.
And you can follow Mike on Facebook, Mike's weather page.
All the socials.
I got last question for you, Mike. So you know we're used to being Floridians, listening to meteorologists and people talk about how a storm could basically gain power. Like they're looking like, oh, when the storm hits the straits, that's where all the warm water is.
Yeah,
and,
you always hear warm water, water.
And it's gonna spin faster. It's gonna go up to Category 5 once it hits this warm water. We're all used to that when it's close. Is there a way to predict, like literally in the infancy of a storm, like even coming off the coast of Africa, turning into a tropical depression? Is there a way to even reverse engineer, like to look at some sort of weather pattern in Africa and be like, oh, this is going to be a strong hurricane, or is it completely random?
Right.
Like, can you go all the way back and look at like a particular weather pattern that turns into a depression coming off Africa and then predict that's going to be a hurricane?
Yeah, I've seen forecasters wrong more than right. You know, Irma is the only storm that I recall that they actually had coming off of Africa, and were a little worrisome. But there's been others. The one interesting stat that just blows me away is the 4 Category 5 hurricanes that have hit the United States, dating back to Andrew was one of them, and then Michael. But all 4 Category 5 hurricanes were only a tropical storm 3 days out. And that is an amazing stat if you think about it, because that means 3 days out, Michael was barely even going to be a hurricane at landfall, is what the NHC cone had.
That's kind of scary, Mike.
Yeah, it was scary for Andrew, too. So you add that, but there's a lot of common sense that goes into it. Like with Dorian, I was really getting hammered because originally they showed Dorian falling apart after it passed through the Lesser Antilles, because it was predicted to maybe hit the high mountains of the Haiti and the Dominican Republic.
Sure.
So they blew it off, and it actually ended up reforming a center over the Virgin Islands. Those poor folks had a hurricane warning within like 2 hours warning because it didn't fall apart. And then it turned into what we all remember Dorian being.
Right.
And so that wasn't. But sometimes you just got to use common sense. You know, when those waters are hot, and you just look back at what can happen. That's what people like about the page. I think forecasters have to be real cautious on over predicting. But then, they lose a lot of trust in the public when it ends up being worse.
That's
than
true.
they
That's
thought,
true.
you know?
So I said that was my last question. I'm sorry, Mike, but I got
No,
one
I can
more
talk all
question.
day.
Yeah.
And this may be a hardball in your particular industry.
What are you doing to Mike?
But I just dawned on me that I was like, I got to ask Mike which one he thinks his the most accurate model is, because
His.
Oh, really?
Well, no, this gets thrown around a lot.
It does get thrown around a lot.
Every year, everybody's like, "Oh, you got to look at the European model because that's the most accurate." Then everybody's got their own model that they're like, "This one got the good ones." Because this one is more accurate, and it's all over the place, and no one knows what's right. But I figured you would.
Do you have one that you do lean towards, or do you go, I'm not playing that game?
Yeah.
Well, I've done little with insurance companies, like 1 hour chit chats on the big screens. So I have a slideshow, and I always show how the different storms, the Euro was right and the Euro was wrong, and so yes, it's very hard. Like the Euro predicted Irma was going to go off the coast of east of Florida and never even get close to landfall. Right. And the GFS had it curving up into Naples. And this was back when it was, barely getting into the Eastern Caribbean. So the Euro doesn't make knee-jerk reactions. So the Euro seems like it adjusts slight changes. So when you start to see a pattern with the Euro, if I had to go all in, I'd go with the Euro.
Okay.
But a very close second is the GMC, and the CMC is the Canadian model. And then there's a UK model. Those 4 models are the top 4 that I've seen. Euro being a little better than the rest. And then the other 3 are just kind of like support the Euro's decision. So if you get 3 out of 4, I mean, it's just simple how you do it. But, when you get consensus brewing, then you get confidence. And like with Michael, I remember sharing a screenshot of like 6 different models that all showed a 9, 30, 40, 50 millibar hurricane.
Right.
At the time, it was only supposed to be like a tropical storm. And, man, I got called out. But I'm like, listen, guys, there's 5 or 6 models showing this. So models are your friends. And the NHC, if you ever read their discussions, they only quote models. Like, well, the Euro's trending to the west. The GFS is trending to the right. We're right down the middle. And that's they do the same thing. It's the thing to get you screwed up on is too many forecasters, I think, go all in on one that they want, like they wish cast. They'll see a GFS run and it hits Tampa, and they want to go with it because it's going to give them lights, But then 12 hours later, it's going to be gone. But they don't come back and report that, So it's more about watching trends. But yeah, the Euro typically, if you had to go all in.
All right.
Yeah, and I think that's why a lot of people actually prefer getting their seasonal information from Mike or just general weather information, because he's not playing the game of, hey, I'm an entertainment guy and I want to be the most popular. Even though you are extremely popular, you're playing the game of, I just want to give you accurate weather advice.
Here's all the models at spaghettimodels.com.
Let's make the best decision. It's not about getting an 11 share or whatever they need. Yeah, that's just silly.
Well, sorry, Mike, to hit you with a million questions
I love it, man.
on our first segment.
We really enjoy talking to you, man.
Yeah. And believe me, I can go on for another 20 minutes asking you about.
Well, you wrote something else down.
Yeah. But then we'll save it for next
week.
time.
Yeah.
And the next time we talk to you. But, Mike, we appreciate you agreeing to do this.
Yeah, thanks again for doing it. SpaghettiModels.com.
Man, your marketing department blows my little koozies away.
No,
we got koozies.
We got all the koozies.
We have
You need koozies? We got koozies.
We got all the koozies.
The hat was the coolest thing.
Yeah, we'll send you all
Straw
kinds of
hat.
stuff. We'll just keep sending you gear, man, and we appreciate you donning it.
Yeah, and again, thanks to ABC Fine Wine and Spirits all around Florida for sponsoring this segment. Mike, we will talk to you later, and we appreciate everything you do, man.
All right, be good. Thank you, everybody.
All right, take it easy.
Be good.
Guy's the nicest guy in the world.
I also like how he ends conversation. He's like,
he's a Florida real man that
be good.
Yeah.
Keep your feet on the ground. Keep rooting for the clouds.
Stay safe out there.
Stay safe out
His
there.
audience is gigantic.
Oh, it's huge.
Gotta get in there.
It's absolutely huge.
You guys should do a live broadcast with him on his show.
No, they
or a
hate
live
us.
stream.
Like, get these
I would be
idiots out of here.
Goofballs.
Although I did
They want to
see-
hear hardcore weather.
You guys, like, we joked around about it, when we first got him on the line, but like when I told people, they're like, hey, I saw you share the Mike's weather page. You know that guy? I'm like, yeah, we started working with. You do? Really? Really?
Yeah.
I mean, we've only met him on Skype.
Yeah. If he saw us in person, I'd be like, who are you? No, I'm joking. He's the nicest guy in the world.
Is he sponsored by Chili's?
What?
I can look at spaghettimodels.com
I
and
think
find
that's
out.
like the second time that he
I think
mentioned
he's a chili
he
man.
likes to hide out at Chili's for the El Presidente margaritas.
I think he just likes chili.
That
I
makes
think
me-
he just goes there for happy
I
hour.
like Chili's too.
2 for 1 margarita.
I just
Chili
finally
should be paying you, Mike.
They should.
Your
Yes.
endorsement is worth thousands. I'm not even joking.
My dad liked Chili's
Tens of thousands.
because I put salt on their tortilla chips.
All right, we got to take a break, and we'll be back with more Corporate Time with Tom and Dan right after this.
Bye.